The massive ship of the stellar Dominion hung in Earth's orbit like a gleaming jewel against the blackness of space. Its smooth, curved hull reflected the sun's light, creating patterns that no human craft could match. Inside this marvel of alien technology, Princess Lyra stood at the viewing window, her slender blue-tinged fingers pressed against the clear material as she looked down at the blue planet below. "So this is Earth," she said, her voice musical but cold. "It looks so primitive." The royal advisor beside her bowed slightly. "Yes, Your Highness, but the humans have proven themselves valuable allies against the Void Scourge. The Emperor believes this diplomatic mission will strengthen our alliance." Lyra turned away from the window, her silver eyes narrowing. "Father always has his reasons. Let us get this over with." Down on Earth, Captain James Miller adjusted his dress uniform one last time before joining the other soldiers lined up in the Grand Hall of the United Earth Government Building. As one of Earth's most decorated war heroes from the recent conflict with the Void Scourge, he had been personally selected for the princess's security detail. "Stand tall, Miller," Commander Fox said as he walked past. "The princess of the Stellar Dominion doesn't visit every day. I hear she's quite difficult." James nodded. "Yes, sir. I've read the briefing." The briefing had indeed painted Princess Lyra as cold, proud, and dismissive of species she considered less advanced. Humans fell firmly into that category. But James had faced the nightmarish Void Scourge in battle. He could handle one haughty alien princess. The room fell silent as the great doors opened. Princess Lyra entered, flanked by her own guards. She walked with perfect posture, her long silvery hair flowing behind her like liquid metal. Her skin had a faint blue tint that seemed to glow from within, and her facial features were almost human-like but sharper, more defined. James found himself holding his breath. The pictures in the briefing hadn't captured her presence. The human officials greeted the princess with practiced diplomacy. She responded with perfect politeness that somehow still conveyed her sense of superiority. As the formalities concluded, James and 3 other soldiers were introduced as her Earth security detail. Lyra's silver eyes scanned them quickly, dismissively. "I have my own guards," she said. The Earth ambassador smiled patiently. "Of course, Your Highness, but while on Earth, having humans who know our terrain and customs will be invaluable to your safety." Lyra didn't hide her displeasure, but nodded slightly. The first day of diplomatic meetings went smoothly. James remained vigilant but unobtrusive as the princess met with Earth's leaders. Her knowledge of galactic politics impressed everyone, though her occasional comments about young species like humans drew tight smiles. It was during the journey to the second location, a cultural center in what had once been called New York, that everything changed. The convoy of sleek vehicles moved smoothly through the cleared streets. James sat in the front of the princess's vehicle, eyes constantly scanning for threats. Suddenly, his earpiece crackled with urgent warnings. "Incoming. Unidentified craft. 3 o'clock." James reacted instantly. "Down," he shouted, lunging toward the princess as the world exploded around them. The blast threw the vehicle sideways. Through the smoke and chaos, James could see dark shapes approaching. Attackers in unmarked combat gear. Not human, not Stellar Dominion. Something else. "Stay with me, Your Highness," he said, pulling Lyra from the damaged vehicle. Her silver eyes were wide with shock as James drew his weapon. The first attacker reached them, wielding an energy blade. James fired twice, moved forward, and struck with practiced efficiency. The attacker fell. "This way," James said, guiding the princess toward cover as her royal guards engaged more attackers. You're bleeding," Lyra said, noticing the cut across James's cheek. "It's nothing," he replied, positioning himself between her and danger. "My job is to keep you safe." As reinforcements arrived and the attackers retreated, Lyra watched the human soldier who had protected her without hesitation. For the first time since arriving on Earth, she looked at a human with something other than disdain. Perhaps these humans were more interesting than she had thought. "I want him as my personal guard," Princess Lyra declared the next morning, pointing directly at Captain James Miller. The human officials exchanged nervous glances. The princess had summoned them to her temporary quarters after refusing to continue the diplomatic schedule until her security concerns were addressed. "Your Highness," the Earth ambassador began carefully, "Captain Miller is certainly one of our finest, but we have more senior." "I watched him fight," Lyra interrupted. "He moved without hesitation." The others were slow, her silver eyes fixed on James, who stood at attention near the wall. "I choose him." Later, as they walked through the rebuilt gardens of Central Park, James maintained a professional distance from the princess. The attack had changed the entire tone of the diplomatic mission. Security had been doubled, and investigators were working to identify the attackers. "Your people have rebuilt much since your last great war," Lyra said unexpectedly, breaking the silence. "My reports said most of your major cities were destroyed only 70 years ago." James nodded. "Humans are good at rebuilding, Your Highness, and at killing each other, from what I've read." James didn't argue. "We've made mistakes. Learn from them too." Lyra stopped to look at a simple flower. In the sunlight, the subtle patterns on her blue-tinged skin became more visible, intricate swirls that marked her royal lineage. "Why did you join your military, Captain Miller?" she asked. The question surprised him. "To protect people who can't protect themselves." "A simple answer," she said. "Simple truths work best, Your Highness." Something like a smile touched her lips. "In the royal court of the Stellar Dominion, simple truths are rarely spoken." She continued walking. "Tell me about these flowers. We have nothing like them on our worlds." Over the next days, a pattern emerged. Princess Lyra would complete her diplomatic duties, then request James take her somewhere to learn about Earth. Museums, historical sites, even ordinary places like markets and parks. Her royal advisors disapproved, but could hardly deny the princess her educational requests. Each day, James noticed small changes in her. Questions became less condescending, more curious. When she spoke of humans, the word primitive appeared less often. "Your art confuses me," she admitted as they stood before a painting in a museum. "It serves no technological function, yet you value it greatly." "It serves an emotional function," James explained. "It helps us understand ourselves and each other." "Emotions," she said, almost whispering the word. "My people believe too much emotion clouds judgment. Royal children are trained from birth to suppress feelings." James glanced at her, seeing not just a princess, but a person shaped by strict rules. "That sounds lonely." Her silver eyes met his. "Loneliness is irrelevant to duty." One evening, while returning from a symphony performance that had left the princess uncharacteristically quiet, their vehicle passed a group of human children playing in a community center yard. Lyra ordered the driver to stop. "What are they doing?" she asked, watching the children laughing and chasing each other. "Just playing." "Being kids," James said. "Didn't you play as a child?" "Royal children study, train, and prepare to serve the Dominion," she replied. "We don't play." For the first time, James saw something vulnerable in her perfect composure. Without thinking, he added, "Maybe you missed out, Your Highness." Instead of the sharp response he expected, she watched the children a moment longer. "Perhaps I did, Captain Miller." Her voice was soft. "Perhaps I did." As they drove away, James realized something had shifted between them. The princess was seeing humanity, and perhaps herself, in a new light. And despite all his training and professionalism, he was beginning to see beyond the alien princess to the person underneath. Neither of them noticed the small drone that followed their vehicle, recording everything for eyes far away in the Stellar Dominion. 2 weeks into Princess Lyra's visit to Earth, rumors began to spread. The royal princess from the Stellar Dominion was spending too much time with her human guard. The other soldiers noticed it first. "Getting cozy with the Blue Princess, aren't you, Miller?" Lieutenant Parker said in the barracks one evening. "Better watch yourself. I hear those royals don't mix their precious bloodlines." James ignored the comments, but they bothered him because they contained truth. The Stellar Dominion's royal family followed strict genetic purity laws. Relationships outside their species were forbidden, especially for royalty. Yet each day with Lyra made it harder to remember why that should matter. "What is this?" Lyra asked one afternoon as dark clouds gathered above the diplomatic compound. "Just a thunderstorm coming," James replied. "We should head inside." But the princess stood transfixed as the first drops of rain fell. "We have no storms like this on my homeworld. Our weather is controlled." She held out her hand, feeling the raindrops. "It's wild." Thunder cracked overhead, making her jump. James fought back a smile. "Does the mighty princess fear a little noise?" He teased before he could stop himself. Instead of taking offense, Lyra laughed, a sound James had never heard from her before. It transformed her face, making her look younger, freer. "Perhaps I do, Captain," she admitted, "though I would never confess such weakness to anyone but you." The storm intensified, forcing them to take shelter in a small garden pavilion. Rain poured down around them, creating a private world of sound and mist. "You're different from other humans," Lyra said suddenly, her silver eyes studying his face. "How so?" "You don't try to impress me. You speak truth without fear." James shrugged. "I faced the Void Scourge in battle. After that, even alien royalty seems less intimidating." She moved closer to him. "Tell me about the battle. The real story, not the official reports." For the first time, James spoke about the horror of facing the Void Scourge. The fear, the losses, the moment he thought all was lost, but fought anyway. "Why keep fighting when defeat seems certain?" she asked. "Because that's what humans do," he said simply. "We don't give up, even when logic says we should." Lightning flashed, illuminating her face as she processed his words. "My people value logic above all. We would have retreated, calculated, planned. But you humans," she shook her head in wonder, "you feel your way forward, even through impossible darkness." "Is that so bad?" James asked. "No," she whispered. "It's beautiful." The word hung between them, charged like the air before lightning strikes. James became acutely aware of how close they were standing, how the rain had created small droplets on her blue-tinged skin that caught the light like tiny stars. Lyra moved first, her hand reaching up to touch the scar on his cheek from the attack. The touch sent electricity through him that had nothing to do with the storm. "In 300 years, no royal has ever," she began, then stopped. "This cannot happen." "What cannot happen?" James asked, though he knew. "This feeling, these thoughts. The royal genetics must remain pure. It is our oldest law." James gently took her hand. Some laws deserve to be questioned. For a moment that stretched into eternity, they stood at the edge of something dangerous and wonderful. Then Lyra stepped back, royal training reasserting itself. "I cannot dishonor my family or my species," she said, though her voice held regret, "no matter what I might personally want." Neither spoke of what had almost happened, but something had changed between them. That night, as Lyra returned to her quarters, she found an unexpected visitor waiting. "Royal Advisor Vex," she said, surprised. "What brings you to Earth?" The elderly advisor bowed, his face grave. "Disturbing reports, Your Highness. The Emperor, your father, has sent me to investigate concerns about your interactions with the humans." Lyra's face revealed nothing, but her heart raced. "What concerns?" "That you may be forgetting who and what you are," he said, "and the price of such forgetfulness could be very high indeed." Far across the compound, James received new orders. Effective immediately, he was being reassigned away from the princess's security detail. "The Emperor demands your immediate return to the Stellar Dominion. Royal Advisor Vex announced to Princess Lyra the next morning. The diplomatic mission is being cut short. Lyra kept her face expressionless, though inside, her thoughts raced. On what grounds? We have 3 more weeks scheduled. Security concerns, Your Highness. Vex's eyes narrowed. The attack on your convoy proves Earth is not safe for royal visits. It was a lie, and they both knew it. The real reason stood behind her removal, the growing closeness between a royal princess and a human soldier. Somehow her father had found out. Across the diplomatic compound, Captain James Miller stood at attention as Commander Fox delivered the news. "You're being reassigned, effective immediately," Fox said, not meeting James's eyes. "Border Patrol at the Mars colony." "Sir, may I ask why?" James kept his voice even. Fox sighed. "Orders from above." Miller. "Way above." The Stellar Dominion made some noise, and our leadership folded like cheap cards. He lowered his voice. "Whatever happened between you and the princess has created a diplomatic incident we can't afford." "Nothing happened, sir." "Doesn't matter. Perception is reality in politics." Fox handed him the transfer papers. "Ship leaves tomorrow. Pack your things." News traveled fast. By afternoon, the story had leaked to the press. Headlines flashed across the planet and beyond. Royal SCANDL, Alien Princess, and Human and Soldier. Stellar Dominion, Princess, ReCALLEDAMID Relationship Rumors. Human Alien Royal Romancy Threatens Galactic Alliance. In her quarters, Lyra watched the reports with growing horror. Beside her, Royal Advisor Vex smiled thinly. "Now you understand the gravity of your actions, Your Highness. The Emperor is furious." "My actions?" Lyra said, anger finally breaking through her composure. "I have done nothing wrong. Your behavior with the human soldier has been observed. The very suggestion of impropriety with a lesser species is enough to damage the royal bloodline's reputation." Vex's voice hardened. "You will return home for purification rituals and proper instruction on your duties." Lyra thought of James, of the storm, of the almost touch that had changed everything. "And if I refuse? Then Earth's position in the Galactic Alliance will be reconsidered." Vex said simply. The anti-human factions in our government would welcome any excuse to remove them. It was blackmail, plain and simple. In the United Earth Government building, emergency meetings were called. Politicians and military leaders argued over how to handle the situation. "We cannot risk our position in the Galactic Alliance," one general insisted. "The protection it offers against the Void Scourge is too valuable. So we just cave to their demands. Send Captain Miller away for doing nothing wrong." Another countered. The Earth Ambassador raised his hands for quiet. "The Stellar Dominion's culture has strict protocols about royal behavior. We knew this when we joined the Alliance. Captain Miller will be reassigned with full honors, and we will apologize for any perceived impropriety." The decision was made. Earth would bend. That evening, Lyra managed to slip her guards long enough to send a secure message to James's quarters. The human guard who delivered it looked nervous, but didn't ask questions. James opened the message alone in his room, already half-packed for Mars. "They are sending me back tomorrow. My father threatens Earth's position in the Alliance if I do not comply. I must go to protect your people. But know this, what I discovered on Earth cannot be undone. You showed me that there are things worth more than duty or tradition. I will not forget." James read the message 3 times before destroying it as instructed. He finished packing in silence. Neither of them knew that their separation was exactly what certain forces wanted, or that the attack on the princess's convoy had been just the first move in a much larger game. In the shadows of power, both human and alien, those who opposed the alliance between species were already celebrating their first victory. Princess Lyra stood motionless as attendants prepared her for the 5th purification ritual. Back in the gleaming towers of the Stellar Dominion capital, She had spent 2 weeks enduring these ceremonies meant to cleanse her of human contamination. "The final ritual will complete tomorrow, Your Highness," the high priest said. "Then your father will consider your rehabilitation complete." Lyra said nothing. She had learned to hide her thoughts behind a mask of royal indifference. But inside, memories of Earth, of rain, of thunder, of honest conversations with James, burned brighter with each attempt to erase them. Light years away, Captain James Miller stared out at the red landscape of Mars through the colony dome. His promotion to head of security for this remote outpost was punishment disguised as reward. "Message for you, Captain," a young soldier said, handing him a data chip. "Came in on the supply shuttle. Marked personal." Alone in his quarters, James activated the chip. The face that appeared in the hologram wasn't Lyra's, but belonged to Trade Ambassador Kell, one of the few Stellar Dominion officials who had treated humans with genuine respect during the diplomatic mission. "Captain Miller," the recording began, "this message comes at great risk. The princess asked me to contact you through unofficial channels. She is under constant surveillance, but wishes you to know 3 things. She is well. She has not forgotten. And she believes the attack during her visit was not random." James replayed the message twice before destroying the chip. Not random. The thought had crossed his mind too. The timing had been too perfect. The attackers too well informed. He began his own quiet investigation, pulling records from Earth security databases, calling in favors from old war buddies, now working in intelligence. 2 days later, his terminal pinged with an encrypted message from an unknown source. "Look deeper into Combine Industries. Both human and Stellar Dominion connections. Attack similarities to previous incidents." In the royal palace, Lyra used her limited freedom after the purification rituals to access the royal archives. As a child, she had discovered secret pathways in the ancient palace systems that even the royal techmasters didn't know about. Through these hidden digital doors, she searched for information about the attackers and found something unexpected: similar attack patterns in 3 previous incidents, all targeting potential alliances between the Stellar Dominion and other species. All 3 alliances had failed in the aftermath. With growing certainty, she tracked financial records that linked back to a conglomerate called the Interstellar Combine, with board members from both the Stellar Dominion nobility and Earth's corporate elite. Lyra carefully copied the evidence to a secure device. She needed to get this information to someone she trusted, but who? Then she remembered Ambassador Kell's offer to help. At great risk, she slipped him the data during a formal dinner. "Captain Miller should see this," she whispered. Days later, James received the information through the same secret channel. The evidence was damning. A conspiracy reaching into both governments, working to keep humans, and the Stellar Dominion from forming too close a bond. But why? He muttered to himself, reviewing the data. What do they gain from keeping us apart? The answer came buried in old Void Scourge battle reports. Together, human adaptability and Stellar Dominion technology had proven far more effective against the Scourge than either species alone. Some people, it seemed, preferred the threat of the Void Scourge to continue. Arms dealers, security contractors, political leaders who used fear to maintain power. James sent a heavily encrypted response through Ambassador Kell. "Evidence received. You were right. We need to meet. This goes beyond us. It affects both our worlds." 3 days later, Lyra received James's message while preparing for a royal appearance. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a small smile. That night, she began planning her escape from the palace. The royal princess, perfect and obedient her entire life, was about to commit treason. For the truth, for Earth, and for a human soldier who had shown her what courage really meant. The neutral space station, Crossroads, hung in the empty space between Earth's solar system and the nearest Stellar Dominion outpost. A trading hub frequented by dozens of species, it was the perfect place to disappear, or to meet in secret. Princess Lyra pulled the hood of her plain traveler's cloak lower over her face. Gone were the royal garments and jeweled accessories. With her distinctive silver hair dyed a common black and temporary pigment dulling her blue skin tone, she looked like any ordinary Dominion citizen. Her escape from the palace had required help from an unexpected source, a group of young nobles who called themselves New Dawn. They believed the old ways of genetic purity and isolation were killing their society. "Your situation with the human has become a symbol for us," one had told her. "If even a royal princess can see the wisdom in connection with other species, perhaps there is hope for change." Now, 3 days after her escape, royal forces were searching for her across 17 star systems, everywhere except this small, unremarkable station where she waited in a corner booth of a dimly lit establishment. Across the station, Captain James Miller, dressed in civilian clothes, passed through the security checkpoint using identification papers provided by sympathetic human intelligence officers. He'd gone AWOL 2 days ago, after sending the evidence they'd gathered to trusted officials in both governments. If he was caught now, the best outcome would be dishonorable discharge. The worst didn't bear thinking about. The central plaza of the station buzzed with activity, merchants hawking exotic goods, travelers rushing to connect with ships, security drones monitoring the crowds. James moved carefully, watching for signs of surveillance. He spotted her in exactly the location their contact had specified. Even disguised, something about her posture, that perfect royal bearing, gave her away to him. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and for a moment, everything else faded away. Then reality crashed back as James noticed 2 figures in unmarked security gear entering the plaza, scanning faces with handheld devices. "We've been compromised," James said softly as he slid into the booth across from Lyra. "Someone knew we'd be here." Lyra's silver eyes widened. "How?" Only Ambassador Kell knew. The realization hit them both simultaneously. "It's a trap," James muttered. "We need to move." They slipped through the back exit, moving quickly through service corridors. James's combat training and Lyra's knowledge of station layouts, required study for royalty, helped them stay ahead of pursuers. "We need to get this evidence to someone with power," Lyra said as they ducked into a maintenance shaft. "Someone who can't be bought." "I have an idea," James replied. "There's a Galactic Alliance Oversight Committee meeting on this station today. Representatives from 12 species, including humans and the Dominion." "Perfect," Lyra said. "But how do we reach them?" "The meeting will be heavily secured." James grinned. "I was a security consultant for their last 3 meetings. I know the protocols." As they worked their way toward the conference level, more pursuers joined the hunt. Not just security personnel now, but professional assassins. The distinctive energy signatures of their weapons gave them away. "The Interstellar Combine isn't taking chances," James said grimly. They were cornered in a service junction, with attackers closing in from 2 directions. James handed Lyra the data device. "Take this. I'll create a diversion. The committee chamber is through that corridor, 3rd door." Lyra grabbed his arm. "No, we do this together, or not at all." James looked at her, this princess who had risked everything for truth, and nodded. Together, they faced the first wave of attackers. James moved with the efficient precision of a combat veteran. To his surprise, Lyra fought alongside him with unexpected skill. "Royal defense training," she explained between breaths, "started when I was 5. They forced their way through, sustaining minor injuries, but pushing toward the committee chamber. Just as they reached the final corridor, a figure stepped out before them. Royal Advisor Vex, holding an illegal disruptor weapon. "I'm disappointed, Princess," he said. "You could have had a comfortable life if you'd just followed the rules." "You're working for the Combine," she accused. "You arranged the attack on Earth." Vex smiled coldly. "The alliance between humans and our people would upset centuries of profitable arrangements. Nothing personal." He raised his weapon and discovered too late the human resilience that had defeated the Void Scourge. James had been playing injured, and now he moved with blinding speed, knocking the weapon aside as Lyra slammed the emergency alarm that would lock down the committee chamber, with them inside it. 1 month after the dramatic events at Crossroads Station, Princess Lyra stood before the Stellar Dominion High Council. The Grand Chamber, with its soaring crystal ceilings and ancient stone floors, had witnessed thousands of years of royal tradition. Today, it would witness something new. The evidence is irrefutable, Lyra stated, her voice clear and strong. The Interstellar Combine, with members from both our worlds, orchestrated attacks to prevent closer alliance between humans and the Dominion. The councillors murmured among themselves. At the head of the chamber sat Emperor Tarn, Lyra's father, his face unreadable. And why would they do this? He finally asked. Because together, humans and our people are stronger than either alone, Lyra answered. Our technology and their adaptability defeated the Void Scourge in ways neither could separately. Those profiting from continued conflict feared this partnership. The investigation that followed the Crossroads incident had exposed corruption reaching into the highest levels of both governments. Vex and his human partners now awaited trial. The Interstellar Combine's operations had been frozen across 12 star systems. You broke royal law, one elderly counselor reminded her. You fled your duties. You consorted with a lesser species. Lyra stood taller. I upheld the highest duty of royalty, protecting our people. And as for humans being lesser, she smiled slightly. I suggest you review the Crossroads security footage again. Without Captain Miller's actions, we would not be having this conversation. Across the chamber sat James, still technically a Deluol from Earth Forces, invited as his special witness. He fought to keep his face neutral as the Emperor studied him with those same silver eyes as Lyra's. This human, the Emperor said thoughtfully. He has caused quite the disruption. Humans often do, Father, Lyra replied. It's their greatest strength. To everyone's surprise, a small smile touched the Emperor's lips. Perhaps. The days that followed brought rapid change. The genetic purity laws, untouched for millennia, came under review. Young Dominion citizens publicly questioned traditions that had isolated their species. Humans, with their reputation for courage at Crossroads, found new respect across the galaxy. James, instead of court-martial, received a promotion and assignment as the first human liaison officer to the Stellar Dominion. On his first day in this new role, he found himself in the royal gardens, waiting for Lyra. When she appeared, wearing simple clothes rather than royal regalia, he couldn't help but smile. Captain Miller, she greeted him formally, though her eyes held warmth. Princess, he replied with a small bow. Walk with me, she said. As they strolled among exotic plants, she spoke of the changes sweeping through her society. Many still resist, of course. Millennia of tradition do not change overnight. Change never comes easy, James agreed, but it comes all the same. They stopped beside a small pool where Lyra had ordered earth flowers planted, simple daisies that looked strange but beautiful against the alien landscape. My father has agreed to establish a joint human Dominion research center, she said, the first of its kind. He wants you to help lead it. James looked surprised. Me? I'm just a soldier. You're much more than that, Lyra said, turning to face him. You're proof of what I've been telling my people, that humans have qualities we need. Adaptability. Courage. The ability to follow your hearts even when logic says otherwise. She took his hand, a public gesture that would have been unthinkable months ago. Now, it was a symbol of the new paradigm they had helped create. The old laws said a princess could never be with someone like you, she said softly. But those laws were written by people who feared difference instead of embracing it. Around them, royal guards and garden workers tried not to stare as the princess of the Stellar Dominion and the human soldiers stood together in the sunlight, their shadows merging on the ground beneath them. So what happens now? James asked. Lyra smiled. Now we write new laws. Together. Across the galaxy, their stories spread, not just royal scandal, but a symbol of change. two species, once separated by tradition and prejudice, finding strength in their differences. And if a princess and a soldier could bridge such a gap, perhaps there was hope for all the divided peoples of the stars.